Okay, today I'm going to try to make a little video on how hot metal gets when you weld it. Now, anybody who's ever done any welding at all knows the metal will turn red and glow. But I'm going to give you a little tutorial on sheet metal. Now, I am not an expert, but I have been welding for well over 50 years. I've only had minimal formal training, so most of it I've learned on my own. Now, a lot of people will just start welding sheet metal without any indication of just how hot it is. Now, when I turn my welder on, I'll set the amperage or the voltage at about 14.9 to 15 volts. And the wire speed at about 80 inches per minute. With the wire I have in it now, which is 035, everybody says you can't weld sheet metal with 035. You can do it, you just got to run it a little hotter and hope you don't burn through when you get into something that's rusted up. Anybody who's watched any of my previous videos know I have had plenty of experience welding rusted sheet metal, even though if you look at it, I take my little sander there and I shine the metal up as best I can. Now, I just got a couple pieces of scrap here that I'm going to use, and then I got a Harbor Freight non-expensive like $22 or $23 heat gun, and I'm going to give you an idea of just how hot one spot gets, and then I'm going to show you how quick you can cool it with a simple air gun. Now, there's nothing here that the average person couldn't do. It's just you have to have a little bit of knowledge about what you're doing before you attack it. I'm fortunate I can have a lift in my garage, and I got a piece of plywood with 1/6 screwed to the back of it to give it a little bit of stability, and I just clamp it onto one side of the vise or the hoist with a C-clamp. That way I can move it to the height I want. Now, when I'm sitting down in my old chair here, I like to have it about where it's at. That way I can see what I'm doing and I can judge how much heat I can put in it. Now, a lot of people don't like to sit when they weld. That's fine, stand up. But don't have what you're welding, especially sheet metal, down on the floor, down on your knees, because trust me, you can't see what you're doing. I've done it. I don't like to do it, so I always sit something up where I can get to it better. Now, you watch other videos on the internet, and they show people who don't even have a workbench in their garage. And if they do have one, they never use it. I myself, I have sawhorses that I can sit out and lay big pieces on. I got a welding table over there with a vise mounted on it. Plus I have a bench vise mounted up here on my workbench. The biggest thing I'm trying to get across here is you got to be comfortable. If you're in an awkward position, now somebody who's out working on construction equipment, laying on their back, welding upside down, that I'm not going to talk about because I've done that and trust me, I don't like it. You can do just as good a weld job with it, but if you're working in your own home shop, try to make yourself comfortable. Another thing that's a pet peeve of mine, you'll see people spot weld stuff together, they call it tacking it, and what they'll do, they'll just close their eyes. 90% of them don't even look away and pull the trigger. Trust me, your eyelids are not made to screen out that intense ultraviolet rays. eventually, if you keep doing that long enough, eventually you're gonna wear some kind of corrective lenses. I know, I learned the hard way. I did it for years, even with a stick welder, just sticking stuff together. With a MIG welder, it's a lot easier to do that. But if you're gonna do this without a helmet, at least turn your head to the side and then close your eyes. Now, if you just turn your head to the side and look away, stare at something, and then close your eyes, you'll be better off. I still do it occasionally. I don't like to do it, but let me get finished setting up here, get a few more things out, and then I'll try to explain to you as I go along what I mean by eventually you're gonna either ruin your eyes or you're gonna end up with a burn someplace that is not fun. The helmet is made not just to protect you from the ultraviolet rays. That's why you wear a helmet instead of just glasses. Yes, you can buy glasses that are 5 shade, something like that. But I weld with an 11 shade, which is dark for most people. The darkest I have is 13, some of my old helmets. Now my eyes have deteriorated over the years since I used them. That's why I had to come down to an 11. Now a 5 is fine for like a plasma cutter. I see people on the internet using a plasma cutter with no eye protection whatsoever, not even safety glasses. Eventually, they're going to injure themselves, and once you injure your eyes, there's no coming back. So just take a break here while I get set up, and I'll be back in a few minutes with everything ready to go. Okay, I'm back. Now I just got this up here so I won't burn my table up too bad. I just have 2 pieces. I think it's about 18 gauge metal. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place them on here. Now I clean the spot here for my grind. This is bare metal now. I'm just going to lay it like that. Now, everybody says you're ready to weld. Wrong. First off, you got to put on some kind of hand protection. I see too many people ending up with squirt burns all over their hands. So this pair of gloves is just about shot, but they'll do for this. As you can see, I wear them till there's nothing left. Now, I'm going to put one spot of weld right in the middle. And then I'm going to put the heat gun, put the heat gun on it. I'm not going to cool it. Let you see what it does. Okay, there it is, 171.8. Now that's one spot. Okay, now we're going to do it again, and then I'm going to put air to it right away, just to show you how quickly it'll cool off. Okay, I took 100 degrees out of it in practically no time at all. You can touch it now with bare fingers. Now this one, when you touch it, it's still warm. It's not hot that'll burn you, but it's warm. Now another thing you see, guys, they go through and they spot everything together like this, and then they come back and they put 5 dots on there. Temperature wise, you're up to 305 degrees. That will more than burn you. It also has a tendency to make the metal contract, and when it does that, it pulls it down. That's why you more than likely are going to have to hammer and dolly all of your welding seams. Now we're going to move that back a little bit, because that's still hot. We'll put 5 more dots. .4. This back here is still at 80. It hasn't cooled down in that length of time. You could touch it now. It wouldn't be any worse than touching a car that's been sitting in the hot sun someplace. Now, people say, are you getting penetration? I would say I got pretty good penetration right there and there, and with just that single dot I got penetration. Now when you do this, okay, if you look, those pieces of metal were flat when they started. Okay, you can see how they've bowed this way. Now if you grind this down so that you don't want to grind your base metal, you just want to grind the weld off. Now since they're small pieces, you can turn it over, hammer it on this side, and knock, I'd say 90% of that bow out. But you gotta make sure when you grind this, you don't put a lot more heat back into it. A lot of people make that mistake. They'll start grinding, and they'll end up with the metal looking like this. You can't even see the seam. But if you turn it over and hit it with a hammer, I guarantee you it's going to crack right where that seam is, right there. Because they put too much heat back in it. Now, it's not a very long video, but I hope it teaches people just how hot this gets. Now I'm going to make a spot right on top of that weld where I know I can put a lot more heat into it, just to show you how hot one single spot can be. Almost 500 degrees. Okay? If you touched that as soon as I quit welding on it, I guarantee you'd have been burned. You figure, when you're cooking on your stove in your kitchen, what's the average setting? 350. You take something out of that hot oven, it's hot, it's gonna burn you. Same way with this. Now we're going to throw a couple more pieces of scrap up here, and we're going to repeat some of this. A lot of people say, oh, you got to have a gap between them. You got to have a gap between them if you want penetration. No, you don't. Now, heavy metal, you better have a gap or you won't get penetration. With sheet metal, the better you make it fit, the less work you're going to have. Well, I just put 5 dots on there. That's all it takes. Now, we got 100% penetration right through there, if you look. So you see what I mean by everything you see on the internet you can't believe. Now I'm going to put another spot right on top of that and make it hot, just to see how hot I can get it. (818 degrees). Almost 3 times what your oven's going to be if you're cooking something at 350. Now, I can wait a few minutes. It's down to 602 now. Wait a couple more minutes. Now it's down to 350. Now it's at 300. That's 1/3 of what it was to begin with. Now we're going to do it again and cool it instantly with air, just to see how quick you can cool it down. The quicker you can take the heat out of it, the less warpage you're going to get. I'm down to 110. Now remember, that was 300 degrees when I started on it, so it was well over 1,000 degrees before I put air on it. Now, you wait a little bit, try it again, it's down to 100 degrees. Now, a hot car sitting in the sunlight, okay, look, I can touch it. It's not excessively hot. It's warm, I can tell it's warm. Because if you take a piece, just like this, it's 73 degrees sitting there because I'm welding on it over here. Now, if I pick up something else, like this dolly, okay, I'll lay it down. The temperature in my garage is about 68. This says 67.4. The metal is going to be a little bit colder than the temperature in the garage because it was colder in here last night. So I hope this helps somebody. Now, myself, I've been doing this for a long time. And yes, a lot of people say I'm not much of a welder. But I have worked for 39 years rebuilding mowers at work, and rarely did I have any of my welds break. The metal will usually stress and break someplace else before my welds will give. Now, sheet metal, yes, can I break that apart? I don't know. As you can see, the weld didn't break. It bent the sheet metal. Now everybody's going to say, yeah, that's because you got so much wood. Okay, here's one where I just spotted it a couple spots. Let's see what this does. Now, when you can bend it that far, the weld didn't give. The metal gave. The weld is actually stronger than the base metal. Now, yes, if you keep wiggling it back and forth, you'll break it. That's with any kind of sheet metal. Now I got to straighten back out, and it will probably break the next time you bend it. But the sheet metal would break easier if you took two pairs of pliers and wiggled it back and forth. It would break just as well. So I hope this helps somebody. I don't know if it will or not. But the two things I want you to remember is, don't be one of them people that does this. Okay? It's going to catch up with you eventually. These helmets are made so that if you tilt your head forward, it comes down into the proper position if you got it adjusted right on the sides. Now, put your welder where you want it. Biggest thing is, put that wire where you want it. Lay it right on the metal. It's not going to hurt anything. Right on the seam or crack or whatever you're trying to weld. Put it on that spot. Now, if you're going to weld a seam on heavy metal, don't be one of them people that's on and off the trigger and just spot welding that heavy metal together. If you push a bead with the MIG welder, it will look like what the guy who's just spotting it, but then he's moving the opposite direction. He's going this way with the gun leaning this way. Now, if you got to weld something and you got to start here and end here, go this way. Learn to weld with both hands. A few years ago, I crushed his hand. I couldn't weld with it. So I learned by practice and repetition how to weld with this hand. Now, it's not the same. I usually don't use my trigger finger because I use my thumb to control it. But you get just as good at it if you do it enough. The biggest thing is, just get yourself some scrap metal. You can go to the scrap yard, and most scrap yards will sell you junk and practice. But remember, if you don't have a good helmet, you're asking for problems. Yes, I got a Lincoln, but I also have a Miller hanging up there. I got 3 or 4 Johnsons, and I have a Hobart hanging over there. Right now, this is my go-to helmet because of the way the headband is made in it. And it's also auto darkening. My Hobart is auto darkening, and it's a good helmet. I like it. It's got a bigger lens in it than this one has. It's got the same outer color, but the lens itself inside is bigger. You're saying, well, that's a big lens. Most of the cheaper welder helmets have a lens that's only 2 inches high. It might have a big cover shield like this, but it's only 2 inches high. My Hobart over there has, I think, a 5-inch high by 4-inch wide, and this one's a 4x4. Now, whenever you're welding, and I'm just messing around here spot welding some stuff just to show the heat range. I put gloves on, okay? I put a leather coat on. You get burnt more than once, you'll learn to put a leather coat on just the same as I did. Now, I have scars on this leg. As you can see, this pair of pants has some holes burning them. I have scars on this leg. Until I got a piece of rawhide. When I'm sitting here for welding for hours, I lay a piece of rawhide over each leg to keep the sparks off my pants legs. Now, another thing that will drive you buggy, especially if you're welding metal that's not clean. Like, this is clean metal. Now you could weld through that right there, that paint. That's a powder coating paint. And that's actually a piece of galvanized metal that I grind the galvanizing off of. Always making sure you got some decent ventilation, because the smoke off this stuff will kill you. Now, and if you're going to do any MIG welding, I highly recommend you buy a pair of these. Okay, they're regular MIG pliers, because right in here you're going to get contamination. If you don't keep this relatively clean in here, what will happen eventually, a piece of slag, well, it's not slag, it's like a bead, because you can see right there where a bead stuck. Right there's the same thing. What'll happen, it'll arc between this housing and this wire guide. Now, your gas comes out these ports back here, and this is designed to funnel the gas out here. But what'll happen, it'll short between here and there. Now, it'll still weld, don't get me wrong, but it won't make a consistent spot weld or a bead. It'll sputter, it'll fight you tooth and nail. Also, when you put these tips in, you replace them, I don't know, whenever they get something arced across them and you can't get it cleared. They're not expensive. When you buy a welder, now you can go to Home Depot, Lowe's, you can go to a welding outlet, you can even go to Harbor Freight, and trust me, their welders are not that bad. But buy extra tips for the size wire you're using. Now, my Lincoln welder will run probably 45 thousandth wire, but then it's 210 volts. It runs off of 220. A lot of people look at these welders, and especially one that's got a digital output like mine does, and they will look at that and they will get totally confused. Now, I'm going to show you something here, if I can get the camera. Okay, this is what the front of my welder looks like. Okay, right here you have your inches per minute and 14.9 volts. I'm running 35 thousandths wire, and that's the setting for 20 gauge, even though I'm welding 18 gauge. It just seems to work better there. Here, it's telling me I'm using a 25% argon CO2. Now, the 25 is CO2. Some places you can buy pure CO2 in a welding tank, and it will work just fine, but I like this kind of gas for what I do, and it's also set for MIG steel. Now, it's running 14.9 volts, 80 inches per minute, 14.9 volts. Now, it's also running 65 amps. Now, amps and voltage are two different things. Here we have 14.7 volts. That's what it's maintaining until I strike an arc, and then it goes to this. Now, I can hit the button here and show you how you set this welder up. It's press to select this button right here. And see, I'm on positive for my wire, negative for the grinder, 75% argon, 25% CO2, diameter 35 thousandths, gauge, or your thickness, 20 gauge, and I'm right back to home. Now, if you have any questions about how to set your welder up, on the inside of the lid, right here, even though mine's full of dust, that's how much I don't use it. On the inside of the lid, 90% of your welders have everything you really need to know to set it up. Now, if you look at this chart closely, okay, we're using steel mid-core wire. Now I'm running 35 thousandths, which is this wire here. Over here, it's saying 88 and 15. That's 80 inches per minute, 15 volts. Which is pretty close what the machine set it up to. Now, if you come on across 18 gauge, it's saying use 90 and 16. Although this works good, it has a tendency sometimes to want to make a bigger puddle on top, which means more grinding. Now, if you get down to, say, 1/8 inch, 240 inches per minute, and 18 volts. You go to 3/16 or 1/4 inch. Very rarely do I weld anything heavier than 1/4 inch. Once in a while. But if I get much more than 5/16, say I want to weld 3/8, okay, this welder only shows one setting for that, and that's down here, and that's because you're running a stick rod. This welder is a multi-purpose. You can change it over and run sticks with it. You can also set it up to run TIG if you want to. Now, stainless steel settings are completely different if you look here. If you look across there, stainless steel settings are completely different. You get down, and this, like I said, you can run a flux or a spool gun with this welder and do aluminum, which is what this symbol is here. That's a spool gun. Now this is flux core. Steel self-sheeted, shielded rather. And you can see they don't recommend going below 18 gauge, but they do go to 5/16 right here. Now you can do flux core with this welder, but I don't very rarely change over to flux core. For that I have a little Lincoln sitting down there. Now, like I said, anything you need to know about how to set your welder up, if you open the door, it will have all this on it. This has instructions here on how to read the console, or on mine, how to set everything up. So if you got any comments or questions, feel free to comment about it. I hope this helps somebody. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. It's free this week. Doesn't cost you a penny. See you at the next one.